Hello, and welcome back. We're going to continue as promised again. So let's set up this AC item settings component. Let's create a function. And this will be the function to create our interaction display, because currently we have the variable, but we did not actually, set it or anything. It's just null right now. So I'll call this function create interaction display. I'm going to get this interaction display variable, convert it to a validated get, and only if it's not valid, then we'll create it. If it is valid, then I just want to exit the function early. Right, so let's select the class, interaction display, and I'll set this variable like so. Next, we'll need to access a function that updates visually in the world for the item if this is actually an indicator, or do we need to update the item itself? Because we're going to use one widget to showcase the indicator and the interaction key and name and all of that good stuff. So to do that, I'm going to head over to my widgets folder for my interaction display, head over to my graph, and create a function. I'll call this update interaction display. This will take an input of type Boolean, and I'll rename this to be is indicator. Right, and now I can set everything up here. Let's see. We need a reference to our AC item settings as well, so I'm thinking we should just do that now. Let's create a variable. AC item settings with the same type. And for this, I need to make it instance editable and expose on spawn. This way, when we create the widget, it's exposed to me in the component. So if I refresh these nodes, you can see it's now here. And since we're already in the component, we can simply get reference to self. Awesome. So let's call the function now, update interaction display. And I'll set is indicator to be true. Let's come here and let's access our interface, which was get interaction widget component. Yep. And the owner of this component will be the item in the world. So I'm just going to drag off and search for owner, get owner. From here, we can drag off and search for set widget. And we want to set the widget to be our interaction display widget. So I'm just going to drag this in. Great. And lastly, we can update the visibility of this widget component. So I'm going to search for set visibility. And the new visibility will be true. Lastly, we can call our return node. And that concludes this function. I'll need another function to remove this interaction display. So I'm thinking we should just create that now. Yeah. It's going to be somewhat similar to the create function. So what I'm going to do is highlight all of the functionality in here, copy it, head over and paste it. Now for the remove function, we'll need a few things different. I'm going to delete this create node and this self node. And I'll disconnect this return node from here. Instead, I'm going to connect it to the is not valid pin. And if it is valid, we're going to get the return value and search for remove from parent. I'll then connect this Let's see. Let's disconnect this actually. Bring this up. We can access these nodes. Interaction widget component. We'll set the widget to nothing because we don't want to be displaying any key or anything on the screen when we are removing it. We'll set the visibility to be false as well. And lastly, we can update this variable by setting it to nothing, null. Right, because we don't want to have any data stored in this. We don't need the update interaction display function because there's nothing to update. It's being removed. And that's it for these two functions. Next, we'll need to create functionality to update when we overlap, begin and end overlap for our indicator. So I'm going to create a function called onBeginOverlap indicator. This will take an input of type actor. And I'll rename this to be other actor. Right, so what we're going to check is if the other actor is our player. So I'm going to search for equal equal. And I'll search for player character. Right, if it is true, then we'll call create interaction display. And we can now call our return node for here and here. Now this is the begin overlap function. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this and rename it to be on end overlap indicator. So it's going to be similar. We're just going to replace this function with the remove interaction display function. Great. Now let's give it a test. We have our interaction display. We can simply just add, let's do, let's do an image for now. I'll just set this to be desired on screen. It's going to be really huge in the world, but we can fix that later. So what I'm going to do now is create a test item. So in my interaction manager folder, I'm just going to select right in the open here, create a new blueprint class of type actor. And I'll call this baby_example. We can then open this up. And to the top left, we can add a sphere collision. I'll make it somewhat large, so like maybe 400. I'll scroll all the way down and uncheck hidden in game so that we can see the radius in the world. I'll then add my item settings component so we can access if it's a press, hold, if it's 0 or a 2-3 second held time, and the item's name. And of course, we have the onCompleted option event. So we can access the owner and the interaction manager component. We already have the item settings component, so we don't need that entry here. Now, I'm going to head over to class settings, in my example, actor. And I'll then add my BVI item actor interface. Double click to open this function up. And we need access to our widget component, which we'll need to add here. So I'm going to select add, and I'll choose widget component. I'll then slot this in. So now our component understands that this is the widget that we are going to be updating. I'll set the space to be screen. And I guess that's it for now. We don't need to set the widget class because we're doing that dynamically. Now, if I place this actor in the world, you can see we have the sphere radius, and I can walk up, and nothing happens. Now, you might be thinking, why is the item pool 0? Now this is because we created the functions, but we did not call the events. So let's head back to the example, head over to my event graph. I can delete all of these. And I'm going to right click on the sphere, add event, and select on begin overlap and on component end overlap. For the sphere, I'm going to rename this to be my indicator range. Now we'll need access to, what is it? Yeah, item settings. So we can just get item settings and search for begin overlap indicator, connect the execution pins, and for the other actor, we already have it right here. We're going to do the same thing for the end overlap. And that's that. Now let's give it a test. As you can see, it's really huge on screen, just like I said. But we know it's working. And don't you worry about the item pool. We don't want to add an item to the pool when we're in indication range. We want to add it when we are in interaction range. So I'm going to save this. And we can now close these two functions. Let's carry on by creating, let's see, what am I missing? Okay, so let's create the interaction functionality for when we overlap the secondary sphere. Let me think a bit. Okay, so let's create a function. I'm going to duplicate the onBegin overlap indicator function. And I'll call this onBegin overlap interaction. We're going to leave these few nodes here. I'll leave the return node right here, and I'll bring this aside. I'll then get my interaction display, convert this to a validated get. I'll then call my update interaction display function, and I'll set isIndicator to be false because we want this to be displaying our interaction widget functionality. We'll then need to update the item's name from the interaction display. So what I recommend we do now is head back to widgets, interaction display, and create a function to set the name. I'll call this set item name. This will take an input of type text, and I'll rename it to be item name. Now we can call that function. Oh, I created it in the wrong space. My bad. I'll just cut this function by hitting Ctrl X, compile and save, and I'll close this widget and open up interaction display and paste that function. Now let's call it. So we're asking for an item name, which we already have a variable for. So let's just insert this right here. Next, we'll access the other actor input. So I'm just going to copy the text, get it as a local variable in my graph, and I'll access its component. Now the other actor is the player, so we'll need to access the interaction manager component. Make sure that it is valid. And I'll call the function add item to pool. And the item to add will be the owner of this AC item settings, which would be the item itself. So I can just drag off and search for get owner. And then we can plug up our return node. Great. We can now duplicate this function, and I'll call this on end overlap interaction. And it's going to be slightly different. Not a lot, but slightly. Okay, let's see here. going to leave all of this. I'm going to set isIndicator to be true because when we end overlap the interaction range, we want to show the indicator again. We don't want to set any interaction name or anything. We want to reset the progress if it was a hold interaction and we end and begin overlap again. So what I'm thinking is we should delete this. I'll then bring this to the right or bring it down or something. I'll then get the interaction type and check if it is equal enum to hold. If it is, then we want to do something slightly different. If it's hold, then we want to reset the held progress. So I'm going to get the interaction display and call reset held progress. And then we can bring back all of these nodes. And if the interaction type is not hold, then we can just bypass this held progress function and connect it to my isValid pin. Great. Now all we need to do is remove the item from the pool. So I'm going to delete this function and search for remove item from pool. And the item that we want to remove is the owner as well. Great. Well, that's it. Let's now head over to our example actor. I'll remove this from the indicator range and I'll duplicate this. And now I'll call this interaction range. I'll make it smaller, maybe 150. So if I head to my viewport, you can see we have two spheres. The large one would be our indicator and the smaller one is our interaction. And we need both events, which is begin and end overlap. Repeat the steps. So we're going to call overlap for interaction, begin, and overlap for interaction, end. Okay. So now what's going to happen is when we, or what would happen eventually, I should say, because we haven't set up our interaction display to update the indicator just yet. But what would happen now is when we overlap the larger sphere, we'll see the indicator, and then when we go into here, we'll show our interaction key, item name, all of that good stuff, and also add the item to the actor pool, giving us the ability to interact with this item. We'll save. Back in item settings, let's see if I'm missing any functionality. Okay, so there's one more. And this is strictly for modularity, so that when we have a master actor, we can just select our actor in the world and modify the settings in the details panel. So I'm going to select my item settings component and I'll create a new function called set item settings. And I'll drag in my interaction type, drag it as an input. And I'm going to do the same with the other two customizable variables, which is the max held time and the item name. Straighten everything up and call my return node. Now, what I mean by that is I'm going to head over to my example actor and show you now. So if I head to my construction script and I get AC item settings, I can search for set item settings, connect this up, and now I can simply promote all of these to variables. And now I can make them instance editable. If I select this actor in the world, now you can see we can modify the max held time, the interaction type, and the item name at runtime. So it's good. Right. Now we still have yet to use this event, but for now I'll just do a print string that says item picked up. And then we can destroy the actor. Right. Save. Let's see. That's it for our item settings component. So we don't need anything else here. We can compile and save. We can close the interaction manager component, and we can close the item settings component. We can also close this example actor. And in the next episode, we are going to set up the functionality for our interaction display, notify, and notify display. Bye.